All right, welcome back. Yeah, so we are in well into the second half of the semester, almost at the end. So next week is Thanksgiving, and then we're heading out. We're heading towards the last several weeks of the semester. So the intent is that you are all working feverishly towards the project, and so we are covering some of the more advanced material, right? That it focuses mostly on the second half of a client server architecture application, right? That in the first half we focus mostly on the front end, right? That dealt with the user, creating user interfaces, and then now in this second half we are focusing on the server and now on the database to give a full a permanent storage solution. And so we've been learning about routes all last week, right? And this week we learned about databases, right? We've been moving the data away from the client side where we had it originally, right? And we moved it over to the server for the last assignment with the intent of learning how is it that we can integrate clients and servers, right, through an HTTP RESTful API. And then now we are finally moving the data where it really belongs, right, in a database. Okay. And so we discussed how to connect to a database, how to create models and schemas and data access objects to interact with the database, right? And then we exposed all that functionality through almost like a RESTful API, through an API, web API, right? But not all of it was RESTful. And then we proceeded to integrate a user interface with the server that then integrated with the database, right? So today we're going to continue more of that. In particular, I'm going to focus on some of the requirements of the final project and the upcoming assignment 6, which is that your application should allow folks to create new accounts, right? Sign in with those credentials, then visit their accounts, be able to modify their personal information, right? Also, that you should be able to navigate to other people's accounts, but obviously you won't be able to edit their account unless you're an admin. Maybe you could, and then interact with them, perhaps follow them or leave a message to them or somehow invite them or whatnot. Let's see, there's a question on the chat. Will we have a lecture on the 21st? 21st. Oh, that's next Tuesday, you mean? Yes, I believe so. I don't know. My son, I think, is flying in for Thanksgiving that day. So okay, so he's flying in. He's he arrives at 7 o'clock. Ooh. So I might need to move that. Maybe perhaps we can move it to Monday, since I'm going to be picking up my son, unless I tell him to come up with Boston Express, and then I can just pick him up here. I don't know. I'll see. We might need to maybe move it to Monday, perhaps. Definitely not Wednesday. Okay. Yeah, but yeah, no, we are having a lecture early next week. It's just I'm not quite sure if I need to move it to Monday or something, or maybe I'll record it and release it for Wednesday or something like that when I get back from picking up my son for Thanksgiving. So yeah, but definitely we're not having the lecture on the second half of the week, right? Because everybody's on vacation. Right. So let's continue. And so I'm going to show you how to implement logging in. we'll implement it in in a simplified way first, right? Not very sophisticated, but it works, right? But it will have the limitation that you'll only be able to log in one person at a time, okay? And mostly because I want to focus first on what the functionality is, right? Of being able to identify yourself, right? And how to look up users from the database, make them the current user, right? When they sign in, and also when you sign up, right? You know, checking to see if the person already exists, right? And then creating them in the database. Then, you know, if I'm logged in, I like to be able to access my account, my profile. So how do I do that? So let's focus on that, those features. We'll implement it using a single user, and then next week, right, we'll talk about being able to enhance that to support multiple users simultaneously logging in, and then the server needing to kind of like talk to dozens, hundreds, thousands of users simultaneously, right? And so we'll see how that scales. So that's an entirely different discussion, right? Of how is it that we can scale from one user to multiple users. So that's an entirely different discussion, right? And it warrants its own lecture. Excuse me. All right. So a few things. So assignment 5. Some of you have discovered that there was some typos, some errors in the code that I provided. So I moved the due date to Monday, right, to give us all a chance to to work on that and fix that up. I am going over the assignment and going through the exercises, and I'm going to publish on branch A5 a revised solution based on that assignment. And again, feel free to use that. And so if it's not working for you, you run into you can always take a look at the code that I'm providing, right, and use that as your own, right? And it should be pluggable, plug and play, that you just replace whatever code you might have that's not working with my code, and again, feel free to use that. Meanwhile, we're going to move on to assignment 6, right? And now it's kind of like a blend of working with the assignment, but the assignment is kind of like working towards the project, setting up some of the features for the project. Now that we have the entire stack, right? We have the front end, we have the middle tier, we have the database, right? Now we can kind of build everything all throughout. Okay. All right. Yeah. So let's take a look. Also, I moved the quiz to the beginning of next week, right? So it'll be available towards the beginning of the week, and you can take the quiz, for the first couple of days. There will be available, and so you can take it on your own. Okay. And the quiz will be all about Node.js. So questions such as routes, right? Path parameters, query parameters, encoding things in the body, right? Extracting things from the body, right? Whether you use post, put, delete, get, when to use what or where, right? The RESTful APIs, the REST acronym, right? Make sure you know what the REST acronym means, what API stands for, right? So all that great stuff. Course, CORS, right? So yeah, that's coming early next week. Okay, so let's see where we left off. So this is following our architecture from the upcoming assignment 6. So assignment 6, we were working with this architecture, right? That we first learned how to connect to a database, right? We built the schema and the model for validating the data, right? When we were sending it over to the server. We then built the model, which implemented some low-level APIs, right, to talk to a database. And then we wrapped that low-level API with a higher-level API that was specific for our purposes, right, for what we were building. right? And then we published, or we made available that functionality, that database functionality, through a set of RESTful APIs that we can then integrate from the user interface, right? So that's what we worked on, following this map, where things fall. And the database, I think, might not be running. So let's start it up with a terminal. So let's see. Let me bring that up. Oh, too small. And so my database is in user, local Mongo bin, then Mongo D, and then DB path is data. So the server is up and running, right? We can minimize this, put it away for now. And we can bring in the database clients, right? Compass, right? That allows us to graphically interact with the database, and we can see the records that are, the documents that are stored in there, right? We can connect and then see the database that we were working with last time. So it's this one, right? We created some users. Do we insert some courses? Okay, we haven't, right? But the assignment does ask you to add some courses. Okay, so here's users, right? These were the users that we imported from a file that I gave you, right? And we can zoom in a little bit. Okay, then on the server side, right, we created inside of the users directory, we created first a schema that described the data that we were interacting and storing in the database, right? Users with usernames, passwords, emails, and so on and so forth, right? Then we use a model, right, to implement the low-level API that connects to the database and allows us to insert, update, delete. It provides all the low-level functions, right? Model dots. So you have, find, you have, update, right? We have the delete functions are there, right? We can create so that we can insert, right? Mostly the same kind of functions that you find in here in Mongo, right? The right, that you can say, you can use the database, right? And once you're connected, you can show the collections, right? And so if you're working with users, right, then you have the same functions here. You have all the finder functions, but these are manual, right? You manually type this to interact with the database. We have all the update functions, right? We have all the delete functions, right? The only difference between the API, right, and this is that in the API we use .create, but here we use insert to insert a document, right? So that's the only difference between the Mongo manual console interface, right, with the programmatic, right, API that is available here, right? Find. So the same functions, right? The only difference is that over there it's insert, and here is create, right? So yeah, that's minor. So anyway, so this is all the low-level stuff to talk to the database, and then we wrap this around with our own API that's a little more specific to our domain, right, of what we're doing, our topic. So for instance, we created several finder methods, right, for retrieving users in all sorts of ways, like, retrieving all the users first, right, all of them. Then retrieving a specific user if I give out the primary key, then by username, by credentials, by username and password, right? Then by role too, right? We can pattern match the role. And then some other CRUD operations like creating, right, updating or deleting users by their primary key, right? Then we expose this, right? We made it available to the rest of the world through this API, which it's not all of them are RESTful, right? And remember, RESTful APIs don't include any verbs, right? They all include plural nouns. and you encode primary keys, right? But and some of these are RESTful, like this one is RESTful, right? So right, no verbs, nouns, right? Has got primary keys. This one too is fine, right? This one's RESTful, right? It says that I am deleting, I'm using delete to delete, right? I'm providing the ID of the user, the noun. Put is also RESTful, so that's good. Let's see what else. So this is not RESTful, right? Because we're encoding something that is not a primary key. Well, unless username, you chose username to be your primary key, then yes, this would be considered RESTful, right? But we know that the primary key is the ID, not username. So this is not RESTful. Okay? This one is even worse, right? Here we have two fields in there, credentials, and also, as we'll see in a minute, it's also a bad practice to be passing around sensitive information like passwords, right, in the URL, encoded in the URL, because these requests go out and they're in the clear. People could view this, right? So yeah, we'll discuss it in a minute. So yeah, so we use this API to then implement on the user interface. We implemented a few things, right? We implemented several. Wait a minute. How do I go to the? Oh, here's a file. We implemented this client that is kind of like the mirror image of the server, right? The server has all these functions, right? And now on the server, all these functions are interacting with the, right? All these functions are interacting with the database, whereas in our side, we're interacting with the server. So this is the client talking to the server, and this, right? These are the server talking to the database, right? So the client, the user interface sends the request to here, right? User API. We catch that here. We catch it, find all users, right? And then we talk to the database, and we respond with what the database responds, right? So it's kind of the client goes to the server goes to the database responds with a collection with the data, right? And then we responded back to the client, right? That's why often we call the server, we call it the middle tier, right? It's like in the middle of two endpoints. Yeah, so we created several screens based on these API, right? We built this screen here that displayed all the users, right? We had a state variable that held an array of users. We went to fetch it from the server, right, using the client, right? This get here, this get that's going out to the users. And then we set the local array, and then we iterated over it, right? And we're running this when the screen first loads. Yes. So yeah, we built that. We also made these to be a hyperlinks, so that when you clicked on that user, we encoded the ID in the URL, right? And that was mapped to this detail screen, right? This detail screen then fetched only that one user, right? It parsed the ID from the URL because it was encoded in the URL, right? We fetched it by using find user by ID, which sent out the ID out to the server. The server caught that, right? The server caught that here, right? It retrieved the user from using the ID, retrieved it from the server, from the database, and responded with that user, right? And then we send it back to the detail screen. We set the local state variable, right? And then we display that state variable. We also were playing around with being able to edit a user's profile, right? And so we had like an input field, you can edit it, and we have like an update button, right? That call this update function, right? That that sent out the user to the update user in the client. The client sent a put, including the user updates, right, in the body. That went out to the server. The server received it as a put right here, right, with the ID encoded in the URL, and we parse that ID. We retrieved all the data, all the new things that you are updating, and then we called DAO update user, which used this update one, right, that updated on that one user, right, and modified all the fields that had changed, right, and then we just responded with the status back, right, and then the client displays the updates. Okay, that makes sense. Anyway, so that's what we worked on last time around. Notice that nowhere at no time were we having any notion of who was logged in, who was doing these things, right? We were just illustrating and demonstrating that we can create a user interface, right, to modify data in the database, right? But now let's go a little bit more structured. Not everybody should be allowed to do that, right? Maybe only admins should be allowed to do that. Or maybe you should be able to do it with your account, but no one else's, right? And so if you visit somebody else's account, right, then if it's not your account, then it should be read-only. I can only read, but if you visit but if you're an administrator, then yes, you can edit somebody else's account, right? And whether, whatever role you have, if you're looking at your own account, then you should be able to edit that, right? So yeah, so let's play around with this, right? Being able to identify yourself, log in, right? Based on on your role, the things that you could do. Then you'll be able to update your account, which we did already. And we also want to be able to depending on the role, right, then maybe do certain things, right? And if you're an admin, the things that you could do or you could not do, right? So let's talk about that. All right, so what operations do we need? So usually basically you need 4 basic operators, right? You need to be able to identify yourself. Who are you, right? Well, sorry. First, you need to be able to create an account. I need to be able to, say I'm a new user here, identify yourself, provide some credentials. You have to be able to, leave and then maybe come back tomorrow and then say, oh, it's me again, right? And then provide the same credentials, and we have to find you. Somehow the server needs to be able to remember that you are logged in, right? I have to be able to visit my account, so I need to be able to retrieve my information, and then finally I need to log out, right? So let's implement that, right? So here we have those operations. We have a const, we'll call it signing in. And we need to implement also the signing out, sign in. We need to be able to sign out, so sign out. We need to be able to sign up, right? And we need to retrieve your account information. So those are the basic 4 operations when you're dealing with authentication, right? I mean, you can create a few more, right? But those are the basic 4, right? And so now, since we already have users in our database, let's work with sign in first, so we can establish an identity, right? And that we are logged in, and we could do certain things. So where should we remember that you are logged in, right? Now we can't remember it on the client because, right, if you use a state variable, or even if you use a reducer and you successfully log in, right, if you refresh the screen, you kind of lose that. Then you would have to log in again, right? So a better solution is to store that somewhere on the server, right? And so I'm going to store it in a local variable, and we'll call it the current user. And initially, we're going to set it to null, right? So this is going to be the currently logged in user, right? The current user. So when I log in, or when I sign in, what it should do is receive my credentials, look me up in the database, and if there is a match with that user and password, then that is the currently logged in user, right? You need to set that in that variable. Now, how should we send the username and password? Okay, so we already did that prior here, right? We were sending username and password, but that's a big no-no, right? Because this URL, right, is encoding the username and password as plain text in a URL, and that URL is visible to anybody in between, right, your browser, right, and the target server. Your target's, your browser is sitting on your desktop, and the target server might be, halfway across the world. And to get there, your request is going to make a lot of hops, right, in between several machines, right, to get to its destination. And anyone in between can be listening and looking at the URL the requests pass by. So we could capture that, right, and we could read your username and password, right? So that's that is a security risk, right? So instead, what we're going to do is that we're not going to use get. Instead, we're going to use post, and we're going to encode the username and password in the body of the post of the HTTP request, right? So that's going to give us the opportunity, right, to encode or to encrypt the body, right, so that even if anyone is listening in between those hops, even if they read our body, right, it's going to be gibberish to them. It'll be meaningless, right? So we're going to be using posts because of the security concern, but it does break the RESTful convention, since, right, we're not really creating new data, right? We're actually reading data. We are querying, does this person exist, right? But nevertheless, right, for security reasons, that's right, that wins over a RESTful API, right? So yeah, so let's implement that. So I'm going to say app.posts users/sign-in, right? So sign-in is going to receive a post, right? And in here, the username and password are going to be in the body, right? And my AI already is suggesting. So we're going to extract the body from the body. We're going to extract the username and password from the body. We're going to pass in the username and password to find by credential. That's a function implemented in our DAO, right, which uses the model to find one person that matches the username and password, right? If the user exists, right, that becomes our current user, right? And we're going to respond to this to the browser. We're going to respond with that user. And now, if it doesn't, if you don't exist, then we're going to send this. We're going to send the status. Send status. Right, and I guess JSON, yeah. We'll send the status a 403, right, saying it's unallowed, right? So it's not, unallowed, right? That's a security concern, right? We're not going to let you in. So let's try it out, right? Let's start up the server. So this will be nodemon and then app.js. So now that's running. So let's implement that. So let's head over to the client side. So we're going to need to do this, right? We're going to need to post to that URL so that the sign in, we're going to look up in the database and set us as the current user, right? So on the back on the clients, right, in our client code, right, we can implement our new sign in. You can say export, cons sign in, right? We're going to pass in the credentials and we're going to post, right? We're going to post. We'll say, cons response, await Axios post. There it is, right? So it's going to go out to API user/sign-in. We're going to pass in the credentials. And then we're going to just give the response. It's going to include, presumably, hopefully, the user that has just logged in. Okay. So let's create a sign-in screen here. So we'll go and create sign in.js. We create a function, sign in, right? And we're going to then export this sign in. So this will be, we'll need, what do we need? Let's see. We'll need a representation of the user so that we can type in user and password, right? So we'll say, cons, we'll need the username, we'll need the password, probably we'll need to set error, right? And so we're going to bring in the client, right? So we're going to import star, as a client from client, right? We'll need those use effect and use state. Yeah, perfect. And we're going to display a div sign in. We'll have an input field where we can type in the username, right? And then we'll have another for the password. We'll have a button so that we can type in. We're going to have a handler. We're going to have a handler function that handles that click. So we'll call const, sign in. That's going to take the credentials with the username and password. Is going to send them to our state, our client sign in, and then we're going to set. We're going to say set. Actually, we're just going to do console log, right, user, and we're just going to hold that, right? Let's finish this up. So the function is, I'm going to call the sign in function, right? And this is going to be sign in. All right, I think that's it. Let's save that. Perfect. We'll need to navigate there. So we'll add a route in our wait, where's this? This is in the project, right? Oh, wait, did we already create a login? Oh, I guess we had already started with a login, right? But yeah, no, we'll change this to be sign in. This is sign in. There we go. And I guess we need a sign in here. So sign in and sign in. There we go. And so let's run this so we can navigate there. So npm start. And there it is. So let's head over to the browser and let's bring this in here. There we go. So yeah, so here's sign in, and we're going to be able to sign in now. We can inspect to see how the conversation with the server is going. We can see the network. And let's see what happens, right? So let's see if it's just gibberish, right? Okay, so this is coming back with a 403. Looks correct. Let's see what this is going out to the post, right? API uses login, perfect. 403 forbidden, perfect, right? Maybe we could capture that error, right? We can say in our sign-in, right? And we can put this in a try catch, right? That catch the error. I'm going to set the error like that, right? There we go, like that, right? And if there's an error, we can display it here, right? We can display it as a danger. Okay. All right, yeah. So let's try it again. So let's clear this out. I'm gonna sign out. Okay, now if there was a network error, that looks like our server might have crashed, right? So yeah, our server is not running. What happened to our server? Okay, so it crashed. Then what happened here? Modules, blah, blah, importing modules, experimental, blah, 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 blah. Setters, sign in. Importing external node app, blah, blah, blah. Let me just start it again. Let's try it again. So a refresh. and let's some bogus. Okay, 403. Good. Right. So now it didn't crash. Let's try it again. Right, refresh. Right. Sign in. Okay. Oh, network error. Oh, so the server is running. Is crashing. What's going on here? Experimental, blah, blah, blah. Importing JSON modules is an experimental. Where am I doing that? Response, tasks, blah, blah, blah. Warning. Am I doing that? Am I doing that? Down? Yeah, that's correct. User, blah, blah. Sign in. What's going on? So here, so it's giving the response. So that is correct. It's sending that, but then it's crashing right after that. Let's start that again. Let's see, does it crash on our first try? Okay, the server is running, right? Yeah, server is running. Sign in. Okay, did it crash? Oh, it does crash. Okay. What's going on? Why are you crashing? Over the user response, current user, if user HTTP header sent. So it's like, oh, so wait, let's not do that. Let's not do that. Let's try it again. Refresh. Let's see if it crashed. Okay, it didn't crash this time. It didn't crash. Let's try it again. Let's refresh. Sign in. Okay, so it's giving the false, right? But it's not crashing. Yeah, okay. So what happens is that yeah, after you do the send status, it's that's where the request ends. You can't send anything else after that. And I had a .json here, and so that was what's causing the crash, right? I think you can send it before. You can send JSON data first, right? Where it says an error. No user with credentials, right? And then so let's try it again. So refresh. Oh yeah, no, it crashes. It doesn't like that. Okay, never mind. Don't do that. It's just send status 403. Okay. Okay, so once we are signed in, let's actually use a user that does exist. Maybe what users do we have? Let's see. Let's see what users we have. We can look up in localhost 4000. We can look up all the users. Okay, so let's see. We have even star. So let's do that. Password R1123. Let's create an easier one. Do we have Alice here anywhere? We don't have Alice. We don't have Alice. Okay, that's fine. So yeah, so let's I think I have Gandalf in here stored somewhere. So if I have a white wizard, right, Gandalf, I can sign in. Okay, so I signed in, and here's the response. Payload, that's what I sent, and the preview that comes back is that Gandalf, they found Gandalf, and that is the current user. It's going to remember that he has been logged in. All right, chat. I think request that status is away. Oh yeah, that could have been, yes, excellent. Thank you, Chenron. So basically what we want to do probably is that when we are successful logging in, we probably want to be able to navigate to our account, right? Our profile screen, right? So let's do that. Let's create a profile screen, right? Let's create a profile screen or an account screen, however you want to call it. So we'll call it account. And so this will be, function, account screen, and I'm going to export this. And so we can create a navigation for this. So we can load up. I guess we had already created a profile screen. Well, whatever. Import account, right? And so we're going to say that if okay, I guess I have that account here. So account is account, right? Account. And so if we're successful, what we're going to do is that the sign-in is going to navigate. So let's bring in our use navigate. So import. Do we need that? We need a navigate. So use navigate. Right. We'll import a navigator. So const navigate. And then if it's successful, we're going to navigate. We're going to say navigate, and we're going to navigate to /project/account, right? So let's see if that works, right? So if it's bogus, still it's an error. But if I say Gandalf, then it successfully goes out to the account, right? So once in the account, what I'd like to be able to do is retrieve the information about the person who's currently logged in, right? And so I know it's stored in the server, right, under this current user variable, right? So we can, right, we can export here, right? If I hit this account, retrieving the account, I can respond with that user. We can say, well, it could be as simple as returning the user, which could be either null, right, or an actual object of the current user. Or it could be a little more sophisticated. We can say, well, if there is no current user, we're going to send an error message, 403, forbidden. But if it is set, is because somebody had successfully logged in, and we're going to send the object, right? And so let's make that available also in a post for the account, and you're going to return whatever account comes back that you remember, right? So now on the clients, right, the account screen could render this, right? So maybe this is h1, right? And maybe this could be parentheses like that. So we could maybe fetch this. Perhaps in our client, we can go fetch this as an account, right? So this would be accounts, right? We don't need any credentials because you are already logged in, right? And we can go to account here, right? Again, we're not passing any credentials, and it is a post, right? Because it's expecting this on a post, yes? And the data should be the user who just logged in, right? Okay, so in the account screen, right, we can bring that in, that client. So we can import star, as clients from clients. We're gonna need a state variable where we can store the user. We don't need the ID because the ID it is fully, remember, in that state variable in the server. So we're not using an ID for any of this, right? So instead, we're going to go fetch the current user, and then we're going to set the user like that, right? And then unload is that we're going to go fetch the user right there, so we can now display, if there's a user, we can display the username, email, first name, last name, and everything, right? So let's close this, close that, right? Export. And so let's try it, right? So let's try and log it in. We'll need a use state. We'll need to import a few things. We'll import use effect. What else do we need to import? Fetch user is not defined. Fetch user, line 5. Oh, const. 4-3. Okay, we haven't logged in, right? So we're trying to hit the account. We haven't yet logged in. So let's sign in. Right. So say as Gandalf. Right. Sign in. and it goes out and fetches Gandalf information, right? Something on the chat. Could you explain why account won't be a GET request? So it's because notice in the account, right? Notice the password is in the account. So we're passing data back and forth, which includes sensitive information, right? And GET, right, would not allow us to encode it. Well, actually, GET, the body coming from the server would be encoded, right? It could be encoded in SSL, and we are doing a read. But I just want to consistently just use post for anything that is secure, right? Since it allows us to send and receive encoded, encrypted information using SSL. But in this particular case, we could have used GET, right? Because even if we're not encoding anything in the URL, sending over, right? We're just asking for the account, and in SSL, the body from a GET would also be encrypted, right? So yes, it would be fine to use GET here. I just like to anything that is encoded or encrypted, I like to use post. Yeah, so now because I am it is my account, right? I should be able to edit all these things, right? So for instance, these could be instead input fields, right? This could be an input field that allows me to edit the email, and the type is email. Oops. Then I can change my email, right? I can do the same for the first name, input for the first name. I can edit my first name. I can edit my last name, right? What else? Probably what I can't do is I should not be able to change my role, right? So and then if I click on a button to update, right, I can invoke here const update user, which is going to, I think we built this last lecture, update user, which we pass the ID of the user, the changes, right? And right, and that's it, right? And then we can call here using a button to update the user, right? So let's see if this works, right? Or it blows up. So there's our email, right? And I should be able to change this, right? The off-white. So will this change? This says update. So it looks like it came back as successful, right? Saying that yes, we were able to change it. Now to make sure that it changed, if I refresh, notice that it doesn't seem to have changed. It says the gray still. What's going on? If I see the users and refresh, looks like the change has been made to the database. So the database is correct. The change was made to the database, but user interface still shows the old value. And that's probably because what we forgot to do on the server, right, is that in our updates, where's our updates? Yes, we update the user, but notice that the current user was set when we logged in. And so now it's stale, right? Because we changed one of the properties, but the current user stayed set from the last time we logged in, right? So when we update the user, we need to be able to also update the current user. So we remember, right, that all those changes as well. So we say current user, we're going to look up the user again from the database. We just updated. Oh, wait, this is update first name. No, sorry. Where's update user here? Sorry, yeah. Here we're updating the whole user. Once the updates have been done, we retrieve them from the database again, and we update the current user. Let's check to see if this works. So we just started the server again, right? So we're logged out. So let's go back to sign in. Let's try to use even star or Galadriel. So Lady of the Light. And Galadriel is the password, is this one. Right, and there it is. So there's Galadriel. Save, right? And we can change, let's say Galadriella, right? Italiana. So let's update, let's refresh. Notice that the change has taken, right? So if I refresh, it fetches again, it updates my user interface, and it has taken the change. I can save it, right? So it's good. So now it's changed in the database, and it's updated in the state variable in the server, right? What else? Also, I'd like to be able to log out. Once I'm in this account, I like to just cancel my login. And what should happen? Probably should erase my identity in the server and then kick me back to my sign-in screen, right? So first on the server. So on the server, we want to do sign out. So here's sign out. There it is. And basically, what we're going to do is we're just going to just cancel the current user. Now it's going to be null, as it's not going to remember anything about the last person who's logged in, right? And we're going to return a success. It says, yep, you are logged out. Great. And then we can do a sign out here. Also, again, probably you could do a get with this, right? We're not sending any information, right? But again, everything that has to do with security, I like to standardize and use posts all the time. So this sign out, I'm going to sign out, right? And sign out is going to return a success, and in the user interface, we're going to kick you back to the sign in screen, right? So here in the account, we're going to add a sign out, right? Which is going to use in the client is going to send, something like this, sign out, and it's going to send a post to sign out, and it's not going to send any credentials, right? And then in the account, we're going to do sign out. So sign out. We're going to call sign out, right? And that's it, right? And then here we're going to call the button to sign out. Sign out, there it is. What we probably want to do is that when we successfully sign out, right, we're going to send you, right, to the sign-in screen, right? So let's bring the link, the user navigate, right? So let's use navigate so that we can kick you back to the sign-in screen. Here we're going to say navigate back to the sign-in screen, right? So let's try it out. We're not signed in, we're not logged in, right? So let's Lady of the Light. Per the username and password, sign in. Okay, we're signed in. We can refresh, right? We can update Galadriel. We can fix that. Update, right? Refresh. So that's good. We can sign out, right? And notice that it kicks us back to Galadriel. Now notice that if I'm looking at what this URL is doing, I'm noticing that if I navigate to account, I can see the user's primary information, which is my information, right? So folks might be tempted to navigate, literally typing here without me clicking on sign in successfully, right? So it's not letting me in, right? And I don't know the password. So somebody might be tempted to actually type here account, right? And by doing that, they're going to try and fetch the current user. The current user is signed out, right? So we'll get a 403. So we need to handle this, right? So we can handle it by, in the account, we can protect this screen by, when we fetch the user, right? If the user doesn't exist, if it's 403, this is going to throw an exception, right? So we can catch that. We can catch this, and if this does throw an exception, right, I'm just going to navigate you back to signing. So either whether you sign out or you try to access this without signing in, I'm going to kick you back to sign in, right? So let's try it out. So if I go back here, right, and I, without signing in, if I go to account, notice that it kicks me back, right? right? Notice that we're getting the 403. We're trying to go fetch the user. The user comes back as 403, right? But that causes this to stay in the sign-in screen. Everybody good? So that's what we refer to as protecting a route. That route is protected, right? You cannot go to that route, right, without signing in. All right. So yeah. So if you do sign in, I'm not sure what role Galadriel has. Galadriel, she is a faculty, right? I guess Gandalf is the only admin, right? So let's log out. Now, if I log in as a admin, right? If I log in as an admin, and I have that role, right? I should be allowed to, for instance, do certain things that other folks can't do, right? So for instance, we had created a users, right, that lists all the users, right, and be able to navigate. Now that should only be allowed to folks that have the admin role. Not everybody should be able to do that. Just list all the users arbitrarily. That should not be allowed, right? So that should be only available through to admin users. So for instance, if there's a link here, we should be able to provide a link so that admin users, right, can navigate to projects and then users. And maybe this is warning, and then users. Okay, so that's a link, right? That that perhaps in our account, because we're logged in as an admin, we should be able to navigate and see all the users, right? But actually, notice that anybody can see them, right? I can sign out and I can sign in as Galadriel, who is not. What was her name? What was Galadriel's name? Lady. So Lady of the Light. Even though she's not an admin, she's a faculty, she also has the access to the link of users. So we could wrap this around, right, with some logic, whether it says that if the user role is admin, then you can render this link. Otherwise, you can't render that link, right? So yeah, now notice that she's not an admin, so we can't click on the link. But if I sign out and then go as Gandalf, I can see the users. I can navigate to the users. Make sense? Right? So that means we should protect this screen too, right? If we're not the admin, then and I try to type /project/users, it should not allow me to come here, right? So in my lists, right, we could go fetch the current user, right? We can say const grab the current user, and we can fetch the current user with the account, set the user, right? And and here we can ask we only render this if you are an admin, right? So we could say if current user and current users is admin, right, then you can see the list, right? We can see the list of users. Otherwise, then you can't, right? And probably we need to put this inside some nested. Well, actually, no, we already had that, right? We had this. Oh, well, no. So that, and then this down here, like that, right? So only if you are a role of admin, right? So that's if we go back here, I'm not an admin. I tried to navigate here, right? So if I go back, wait, I'm sorry, White Wizard. Okay, no, White Wizard is logged in. So what? So he's an admin. If I go users, huh? I should be able to see this. Wait a minute. What? Current user, blah blah blah. Fetch. Oh, I'm not calling fetch user here, right? Oops. Oh, there it is. Okay, I can see it, right? I can see this. So if I go back, I am logged in as a Gandalf, and I can go and see the users. But say I'm logged in as Galadriel, Lady of the Light, right? And she's only a faculty, right? First of all, I don't get the link, but somebody told me, right, that if I go users, I should be able to see it, but I don't see it because I am not a system administrator. So what should happen? Well, other than this could, give me, so sorry, you're not authorized. We could do that, right? We could say, we could say, if current user is not an admin, right? We could display here unauthorized, right? Unauthorized, right? Unauthorized. Or what we could do is force a navigation, right? We could do there's a link, there's a component here as part of the router DOM, right? That's called navigate, right? Which we've used it before, right? That what it renders, right? What it renders is the capability of you navigating to somewhere. You can say to, and maybe maybe we can kick you out to the sign-in screen, right? And say to project.sign-in, sign in. So if you try getting here with a as Galadriel, which you are, you are somebody who we know, right? But you don't have the capability of going there, but you do try to go there, right? We're going to kick you back to sign in, right? Or say that's unauthorized or something like that. Okay. So yeah. So same thing as if I'm visiting somebody like an administrator, I should be able to edit their account. But if I am visiting someone else's, but I'm not an editor, if I'm not an admin, I should not be able to edit their account, right? But so the question is, well, how would I ever navigate to somebody's account if I'm not an admin, right? And the answer is that it should be in a natural or organic way, right? That we find each other somehow, right? As opposed to me just listing all the users and be able to click it and then navigate to someone. Instead, somehow we would find each other because we have common interests, right? Or that that we're somehow grouped, and we're self-filtering each other, right, based on some common criteria. For instance, say I search for a movie, right, that I like, and then you search for a movie that you like, right, and it happens to be the same movie. So I search for Batman, you search for Batman. That would be a place for us to find each other, right? Maybe you left a like, or maybe you left a review, right, on that movie, and and then now I can see your username that for that particular movie, and then I can click on that and navigate to your profile now. See that? So that's a more natural mechanism by which I navigate to your profile, because we happen to both like the Batman movie, as opposed to arbitrarily having a list of users that I randomly click, right? Or like if you're on Twitter or X or Facebook or whatever, and I see a whole bunch of posts, right? If I click on the post, I can go and visit that person's profile. Or if I'm on YouTube, I can see all the videos that somebody has posted. I can visit their profile. So that's a much more natural way of visiting someone's profile, right? As opposed to just randomly listing all the users, right? So in that vein, let's discuss creating also in the database these relationships, right, of users to users or users to objects, right? That users can like things, right, or that folks can follow each other. So let's discuss some of that, right? So we had discussed searching, right? That this allowed us to search for like the Beatles, right? Right, we discussed this earlier this week. Late last week we looked at this, right, on how is it that we can integrate with a third-party API, right? And so this search, right, if I navigate to a particular item, right, people can start interacting with this. For instance, I want to say that I like this album, right, and then maybe I leave a thumbs up or a rating or a review or something, right, and then someone else comes along and searches for the same album. They would see, right, any comments I might have left here, right, and so they would see my username, right, and they can then establish a relationship with me, right? So let's take a look at that, right? So I'm here. I want to be able to like this this object, right? And so that's one of the requirements. That's another requirement in the project, right? That you have to be able to create a relationship between a human user and a non-human thing, right? Which we call domain objects, right? So and you have to create relationships between a user and a user, right? So between a user and a non-user, and then a user and a user, right? And also between two non-users, right? Like for instance, an album is inside a song is inside an album. That's a relationship between two non-human things. Yes. So the assignment, the project asks you to implement those three things. Your database needs to be able to capture relationships between a user and a user and a non-user, and then two non-users, right? So first, let's explore creating the relationship between a user, say the person who's currently logged in, right, and an album, right, a non-human thing. Okay. So first of all, only the people who are logged in should be able to like something, right? If you're not logged in, then you shouldn't even be allowed to like it, right? So for instance, if I come here at this page, right, the which I think was called details, right? So details, we might put here a button that would allow you to like this, right? So this might be, button, and then this would be like. Here's a like, and maybe this is class button warning, and then float to the end. There it is, right? So this should allow me to to like this, right? But only if I am logged in, right? And I don't know, am I logged in? I forget. So if I go sign in and I sign in as Lady Galadriel, so presumably now I'm signed in, and then I go search and I look for the Beatles. And I search and I go there. So I see this if I'm logged in. If I'm not logged in, then I shouldn't be able to see that, right? So we can implement that, right? Here in the album details screen by fetching the current user, right? So we could say we could use the user client, right? From, yep, I think that's where it is, right? Is that where it is? No. Users. Where is this? Well, I think it's dot. Okay, that's where it is. Okay, so that's all the functions, right? All the functions being able to sign in and fetch the current user, blah blah blah, right? Account. Okay. So let's find the current user. So const current user, and we're going to fetch this current user. So const fetch current user, right? And then we're going to fetch that. We're going to fetch the user. And so now the user is either null or not, right? So if it's null, meaning no one's is logged in, then I'm not going to show that like button, right? So here, this like button, I'm going to say I'm only going to show it if there's a current user. Right? So if there's a current user, doesn't have to be an admin. Doesn't have to be an admin. Like that. Then we have this button only displays if somebody is logged in. So I'm logged in because that's Galadriel. But if I go to my profile, well, my account. So let me change that, right? Let me change that project. We'll call this instead of profile, we'll call this account. And this goes to account. So I can always go to my account. So here, if I sign out, right, and then I go to search, right? It's a question on the chat. So would it be better to use a reducer? Yes, absolutely. To have the user info throughout the application. Absolutely, yes. Yep. So if I search for Beatles here, Beatles, search, and I go here. Okay, so it's coming back as 403, right? Because it's looking for the user is not logged in and is returning word 403. And that's true, that's fine. But in this page, we don't really care, right? We still should be able to access this, even though no one's logged in, right? So we can catch this and then just ignore, right? Ignore it. Fetch the user. I'm going to catch it, the error. We're not going to navigate because you should be able to come to the screen, right? I'm just going to make sure that we're going to set the current user to null, right? So it's null. Notice that it doesn't show it. It doesn't show. So if I go to my account, it's going to force me to sign in. I can go to Galadriel, right? I can sign in as her, and then search for Beatles, right? And I can go there, and now I have my like button. See that? So yeah, I can now like this person or this this album. So where do we store this? So if I click on like, where do I store the fact that this person, the currently logged in person, likes this this album? And what should we store? What should we store? So definitely we need to store it in the database, obviously, right? So let's create a placeholder where we could store it. And so we'll create a schema for this. So we'll create a new folder for doing the likes, right? We'll create a schema for this, right? Because we need to store it somewhere. And so we're going to say, import mongoose. We'll create the schema for the likes. We need to know who like this, right? And so, for instance, this would be the user. And what we're gonna store here is the user's primary key, right? And it's going to notice there's a ref here, which is almost like a foreign key, right? In a relational database, right? We're going to store the primary key of that user so that we can retrieve that user later with that primary key. And we're also going to store the album ID, right? The album, so album ID, this ID right here, that right there. See that? Okay. So it's just a string. It's just a string. Okay, and we're going to store it in a collection called likes. Very good. And we're going to export this. Excellent. Then we're going to need a model so that we can actually insert, delete, update, do all the things that we need, right? So that's going to be the model, right? And we're going to, let's see, question in the chat. Sorry, I may miss this part. Can you explain the type and ref? Yes. So this type is saying that what we're storing here is the primary key. If you remember in Mongo, all these primary keys are of type object ID. See that, this object ID? And so that's what we're saying here. We're saying that what we're storing here is the type object ID, right? So that's the type. Now ref says, it's telling Mongoose, not Mongo, Mongoose. It's saying that locally in our application, there is a model that has been named users, which represents that ID. So that ID is taken from that other collection, right? And that collection is the users collection, right? So this name matches the model for the users. So the users, we gave them a name when we created the model. See that? We give it users. So that users, for me to remember these things, I just use the name of the collection all the time, right? So that even the folder is called users, right? That's called users. So I'm following so that I know this represents that collection, right? So anyway, so I gave this unique name. So that name is what I'm using here, right? So what this is going to allow me to do later is to do something that looks like a join, right? In relational database, when you have data that lives in one table and you have data that lives in another table, and you have foreign keys referencing records from one table to the other, you can join data from one and the other, right? To put it all in one single result, right? So this is what we're going to be able to do. Later on, I'm going to be able to ask for a, I'm going to be able to ask for the likes, right? And says, okay, well, who likes this album? I'm going to provide the album ID. And it's going to come back with 10 users. And those 10 users, I'm only going to have their primary key. But because I have a reference and say that, ooh, this ID is actually pointing to a collection called users, I'm going to be able to say, hey, populate, replace that ID, replace it with the actual object that it references, right? Which will include username, first name, last name, so that when I display the people that like this album, I'm going to be able to display their full information as opposed to just the ID. That makes sense? Yeah, we'll use that in a minute, a little later. Okay. So let's first try to retrieve information about the likes, right? So we're going to import first the schema, and we're going to create the model. So import Mongoose. So the model, like schema, and we're going to export this. Perfect. Right. Then we're going to create a DAO. So DAO are the the various operations that we want to do with the likes, right? So first we're going to import the model.js, right? And we're going to, finding all the likes, probably that's not realistic. It's not something we're going to be doing, right? But for development purposes, for debugging and things, it's useful to be able to retrieve all the likes. But eventually there'll be so many likes that this just becomes unuseful, right? If you have millions of likes, it makes no sense to query and respond with all million likes, right? It's useless. But for development, when you're getting things going, right, it's useful. So the main real life operations is that we want create a like, right? That a user likes an album, right? An album. And I'm going to provide you with the user ID, right? And the album ID. And we're going to insert, right? Into that schema where we have a field called user and we have an album ID field, right? I'm going to create an insert the relationship that this user likes that album. Right? So that creates the like. We also want to unlike, later on, we don't want the like. So delete the user likes album, and I'll give you that. I'm going to delete the record, right, or the document that matches the fact that this user used to like this album, so they no longer like the album. Other things that I want to be able to find all the users, find users that like the album, right? So meaning I'm going to give you the album. I'm going to give you the album, and you're going to tell me return all the likes, right? Wait, fine. So fine. Yeah, okay. So this is going to return all the likes. So it's going to do a find, and it's going to pattern match on the album ID, and it's going to find many likes, right, for that same album. So it's going to have like 3 people like this album, right? 4, 5, 20, 100, thousands of people that like this album, and it's going to give me the list of all the users that like this album, right? And then we're going to have find the albums that a user likes, right? So this will be useful on in my account. If I go to my profile screen, I want to see all the albums that I like, right? So I'll give you the user ID, and you'll tell me all the albums that I like, right? And that's it, right? If we can think of any more, we can create them. But that's what the DAO is, right? We can create the exact queries that we need for our application, right? Okay, so let's now create a route so that we can integrate with this. So let's do a routes .js. So here we're going to have a problem, right? Because so typically you only the logged in user is able to like, right? So presumably I wouldn't even have to pass that information from the client, because the server should be able to remember this, right? The problem is that the currently logged in user only exists right now in the route for the user, right? That's where I'm storing this current user, right? So ideally, this current user would be shared amongst, including this route with the likes, right? Because if I'm going to like something, I don't necessarily need to pass you the ID of the user who's liking this, because you already know, right? It's already being stored in the server. So typically I would not need to do that. But because we don't yet have a capability of sharing this information like a Redux for the server, I'm going to pass in the ID from the client, right? So we're going to do a function for the likes routes, and I'm going to provide the app. And so we're going to implement all these things, right? In the DAO, find all the likes. We're going to implement that. So const find, right? And then we have create user likes, const create user likes album. And we need to import star as DAO from DAOs. Okay. Then we need delete user likes album, find users that like the album, find that, okay, yeah, we have all those. And here the okay, so the AI is suggesting, actually I don't like that. I think it's better if you say users, you'll give me the user ID, right? And then likes. Yeah, I like that better. So user so-and-so likes so-and-so album, right? That reads much better. Delete, right? That user no longer likes that album. Yeah. Then we can retrieve, right? That given this album, I can give back the users, or vice versa, right? If you give me, if I give you the users, if I say users, user ID, I retrieve the likes, it comes back with all the likes for that user. We confuse DAO with reducer. Is DAO pretty much same as reducer? Well, no, right? The reducer, the DAO talks to a database, basically, right? The DAO is just a wrapper around the model. Right, so notice that all the functions are implemented with model, right? And so we have several finders. This is one finder. There's another two finders here, right, that are retrieving data from the database, right? A reducer instead on the client is only for sharing, centralized data across multiple screens, multiple components, right? For instance, like someone was suggesting, instead of on every screen fetching who's currently logged in, I can store that in a centralized server, in a centralized reducer, and then share that across multiple screens, right? So yeah, so separate completely different things, right? The DAO is for the server to be able to integrate and talk to the database. That's it, right? It's not remembering anything. Right? It's not even storing anything, right? It has no state variables, right? There's no place for storage. Its storage is the database, right? Its data access is the data database, right? Okay. So yeah, so let's try this out, right? So let's export this. And then in our app.js, we can import this. We'll say import the likes routes, right? And pass in the app. Okay. So this is still running. Okay, good. So yeah, so now let's head over to the client now, right? And we're looking at the detail screen. We have the like button here, like button. We need to be able to do what? We need to be able to create this like. We're going to create the fact that this person likes that album, and I need to pass both the ID of the user and the ID of the album. And I do have the current user here, so I have the ID of the person, and I have the album ID, right? I have the album ID. So if I click on like, I should be able to do a post, right? I should be able to do this post, and I should be able to insert that into a database. So let's do that. So first we'll need a, let's create, just like we did users, right? Let's put another folder here for likes. We'll create a client in there, client, that talks to the server. And in here, you'll have the same functionality, the mirror image of what we have in the server, right? Here, we're going to send all those gets, those posts, those puts, those deletes to the server, right? So we'll need Axios to do that. So we'll import Axios. We'll have the IP, yeah, right, the API base. Yeah, I guess we want the process env, but for now, we're just going to do /API, just API. We have users, and probably need the likes one too, right? Likes. So this is likes, right? And in here, we're going to have all those other functions, right, that we want to be able to do. We want to be able to find all the likes, right? Const sync, we need to do that, right? So export. We need to be able to do this too, right? So it's almost the same, right? Without the request and response, obviously, right? So we do, export without the request and response. So let me just copy all these, right? So basically, these are the server, and from the client, we're gonna be able to talk to these functions, right, through these web URLs, right? So it's implemented here. So all these are exports, and these are not request response, right? Because we're not on the server. Here we're on the client. Here we're saying, create user likes album. I'll need the, I'll need the user ID, right? And I'll need the album ID. Delete user likes album. I'll pass in the user ID and the album ID. Find user that like album. So I'll have to provide the album ID, and you'll return the users. Here, albums, I'll find the albums for that user likes. So I'll find the user ID, okay? So let's implement each one of these. So first, let's implement this one, create the like, meaning I'm going to click that button, right? And I'm going to insert, right? So I'm going to do what? I'm going to parse the user ID and the album ID from the request. I'm encoding it in the URL. There it is, right? There it is. And so I'm going to create it, and user ID, album ID, perfect. And then this actually comes back with the actual likes, right? With the actual likes, and I'm going to send back that likes, right? Okay, so let's try it out. Let's try and hit that. I'm going to try and hit this URL right here. Right here, we're going to try and hit that. Right here, we're going to try and hit it. Right, we're going to do there's Axios. This is the URL. So the URL looks like that, right? That's what I want to create. So API is already there. API is already there, right? Users. So I need users here, right? So users API. So we can remove that. So user ID. So we can embed that here, right? So we can do like that, and then $, like that. And then the album ID, do that, and then do a $. There we go. So that's the URL that we're sending it to. We're posting it. So that should be hitting this particular URL right here on the server. Okay. And this happens when? It happens when I click on the like button, right? So we will, in the details, we're going to click this like button, and we are going to say like album async, and we're going to send the client, this client, right? Which client is this? Oh, yeah, that's the user client. Wait, what client is this? This is the like client, right? Okay, so we need another client here. We need the import star as likes client from, yep, that one, right? Yep. So here we're going to do the likes client, the likes client, and then the function is create user likes, which takes the ID of the user, right? The ID of the user and the album ID, right? And what comes back is the actual likes, presumably, right? Although we're going to ignore it for now. We're just going to send it off to the server, right? When we click on the album, right? So maybe a better name would be, current user likes album, right? So current user, blah, 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 likes album. And we're going to call this when we click on this button. We're going to say on click, right? We're going to call the current user likes album. Right, current user likes album, blah, blah, it's going to go out. It's going to call this, it's expecting the ID of the user, the album ID. There's user album ID. We're going to send the post, right? And the post is user API, users, user ID, likes album. Let's see if that's true. API, users, user ID, likes album. Calls here, comes over here, parses the IDs from the user and the album. Does it inserts this in the DAO, passes the user ID in the album, does it create, inserts it into the database, right? Comes back and then retrieves the likes. Okay, let's try it out. Let's see if this blows up. Just to verify here, in our database, right, we do not have, so let's refresh. Okay, it looks like we have a likes collection was created. It's empty. It was created because we added a schema that has a collection equals likes, right? So it created it. It's empty. There's nothing there. We haven't added, so we can refresh, right? There's no likes. But let's try it out, right? So I need to log in, right? I'm logged out because we've been playing out with the server, right? So I'm logged out. So let me sign in as Galadriel. I'm gonna sign in. Now that I'm signed in, I'm gonna search for Beatles here. Search, go to that. So I have the likes now, and let's see if this works. Let's click on likes. Okay. It says there's a 404, right? So let's see what is wrong. 404, meaning it did not find that post. So let's see, /API/users, the ID of the user, likes, and the album ID. Really, that doesn't exist. So the server. So it did not find this. What's wrong with my post? API. Let me copy this. I'll paste it on the server, see what's wrong. Let's see, cannot pose API, users, user ID, likes, and then the likes, and the album ID. Huh. App posts. We did the likes routes, and we included it here. Right, it's that one, yeah. Oops. Wait, what? Likes. Is this a different route? Wait. Routes. Okay, yes, it is. Okay, it's this one. So yeah, it's coming here. So wait a minute. So what is it? Why are you complaining? Oh, localhost 3000. Is that going to the wrong URL header? Oh, 3000. It needs to be 4000, not 3000. Okay, what's going on here? Oh yeah, my AI choose 3000. No, it's 4000. Let's try it again. Okay, there we go. Okay, so it logged us out because, right, because we restarted the server, right? So let's go back to sign in. Lady Galadriel. Right, sign in. So search. I'm gonna populate this by default as Beatles because I'm just it's a pain. So in the search, I'm going to initialize this search results, search use params, search term. I'm going to initialize this text value. So this or I'm going to say Beatles. There we go. So I can click on that. Huh? What? Beatles. Oh, huh? Search term. So search or Beatles, maybe? Maybe that's better. All right, never mind. Beatles. Search. Okay, so if I click on that, I'm still logged in. Let's try it again. Let's refresh. Like. Okay, so this time it didn't blow up. Let's see. It went out. We did the posts. It came back saying that indeed it was able to insert that into a database with that user, presumably Galadriel, right? And then the album ID. Let's check the database. We can go to here and we can refresh. And indeed, we were able to insert that. See that, right? So yeah, so we have the likes. Very good. And so here we should be able to display all the people that have liked this album, right? Presumably, right, as a list of likes, right? So presumably we could do here maybe like an array of likes, const likes, right, which is empty at first, and then as we like, as new likes come in, right, we could maybe add them to that array so that we can have a list of all the people that like this album. Okay? So once we have the likes, we could maybe do set likes as a oh wait, so likes. This is the likes. So I'm going to copy all the old likes, and I'm going to append the new likes right at the beginning, and then we could render these, right? We could render them maybe underneath, as the likes, right? People that likes or likes, right? And we can iterate over the likes and maybe display what? Well, we have the user, but we really just have the ID of the user, right? And so it doesn't have to be H3. LI, let's close this, UL, right? So if I like this, right? If somebody else likes it, it would be appended to here, right? Plus, I should be able to see all the likes from previous people that have come here. So I should be able to go fetch all those likes and display them here, right? For that particular album, right? So let's do that. I know the album. I should be able to fetch all the likes, all the people that have liked this album, right? So let's go back to the server, and so we have find users that like the album, right? And that's this one, right? Find users like the album. I'm going to provide the ID I want the users, right? So let's do that. So we're going to do I have the album ID. I'm going to extract it from the parameters, right? I'm going to do find users that like. There it is. Fine, right? And here are the users. Well, not users. Really, these are the likes. Really, these are the likes that include the users, right? So I'm going to just respond to likes. And so let's fetch that. Let's fetch that. So let's go out to the client. And in the client, we did have we had a client in the likes that can find the users that like the album. And the URL that we need is I think, yeah, likes/album/users. I believe that is correct, right? Let's see if that's true. Find users. So API likes, right? API likes, yes. Followed by the album ID, right? Followed by /users. That's correct, right? So we're going to go fetch that. We're going to retrieve all the arrays of all the likes that come back. And we're going to do that from here. We're going to go fetch that. We're going to say fetch the likes. So we're going to say fetch the likes. So const, right? Fetch likes. And it's going to go to the likes client, find the likes for the album ID, which I have, right? We're going to set the likes, and they're going to render. And I'm going to do that when I refresh here. So we're going to say fetch the likes, right? Okay, so let's go fetch here. Oops, what happens here? Imported as blah, blah, likes client was not found. Export, wait, did I use the wrong name? Oh, no. Fetch likes, no, this is, sorry, that's not the function that we want. So it's this one, right? Yeah, find users that like the album. There we go. That one. Yep. So let's go back. And there it is. So there it is, right? It's showing the ID of the user, right? It's showing the ID of the user that liked this. And this should be Galadriel, right? So if I copy that and I go to my Mongoose into my users, Galadriel, it's this one, right? Should be that one, right? Let's see. It ends with 8D1E5. 8D1E5. Yeah, so I do have the ID of the person. Now, more interesting would be that I would actually have her information as opposed to just the ID. So for that, right, on the server in the database, right, in the database, here, when we do the find, right, when we have the model.find, if you remember, right, if you remember in the schema of the like, we used the object ID and we have the ref users. Remember that? That is going to allow me to do a further query here and say, well, I know you have the ID of the person, right? But that matches with the model users, which is connected to the schema of the users collection. Why don't you use this ID to fetch that object, given the ID, go fetch me that object, right, and bring it in? Because the ID is it's garbage, right? So here what we're going to do is that we can use populate. We can say populate the field users, right? And now, and when we come back here, I think this is going to blow up. Let's see, refresh. Okay, it blew up because now it's not a string anymore, right? It used to be just a string. Now it's an object. Okay, now it's an object. So it's saying, I don't know how to render that object. Right, so in the client here, when we render these likes user, now this used to be a string of the ID only, but now we have an object. So we should be able to say username here. There it is. See that? Lady of the light. Or we can display her entire information. This could be first name, right, and last name. I guess Galadriel doesn't have a last name, right? And her username as well, right? Maybe with an @ or something, right? But now, right, I should be able to create a link that would allow me to navigate to her account, right? So this, we could wrap this as a link that goes to users and the ID for her, right? That would allow me to navigate to her account. I can now navigate to her, and then I could put maybe a follows here, right? A follows that would allow me to now establish a relationship with her, right? And same thing, I would need to create a schema for the follows, the model for follows and all that, right? But let's do one more. Let's sign out. Let's go to my account. I'm gonna I guess all right, it restarted, so I'm no longer logged in. But notice that even if not being logged in, I still can search. And I see the likes. See that? I'm anonymous. It doesn't know who I am. So it doesn't allow me to like, but I can still see that Galadriel likes that, right? I can still navigate to her. I can still see her user. I shouldn't be able to edit Galadriel's name, right? So yeah, I can navigate as an anonymous user without having to log in. And so that's one of the requirements in the project, right? That asks you that, the whole thing should be available to anybody, but you should restrict things, depending on whether you're logged in or not, right? Whether it's your account or not your account, whether depending on your role, right? Things that you can do and what you can't do, right? So I can still search, right? I can still navigate, I can still see things, but I can't generate content. I can't edit anything. I can't tell you that I like something because you don't know who I am. But let's sign in again, someone else. Let's see, as Tony Stark. So Iron Man, so Stark 1, 2, 3. So Iron Man and so Stark. 1, 2, 3. So I'm signed in. I can go to that same place here, and I can like. So I created that user, that like, but it came back as a string, probably, right? Only the likes, but it was not populated, so it's not populated. So, but if I refresh, I should be able to see it. There it is. There's Tony, right? So anyway, so there's a little more work to be there. So I can navigate to Tony's account or Lady Galadriel, right? So since Galadriel likes this, if I go to her, right, I should be able to see her likes. What she likes should be listed here, right? And if I go to Tony, I would see what he likes, well, which are not necessarily the same. Obviously, there would be some overlap, right? That, you know, they both like that particular album, right? So that means that from the users, right, the users' details as they navigate to each, right, I should be able to retrieve the albums that I like, right? So how do I do that? So I can have here, I can, you know, list the likes as well. So I'm going to do the same thing, you know, set the likes as an array. I'm going to fetch the likes, but this time around is I'm providing, so you fetch the albums that the person likes, not the person that like the album. So it's the inverse, right? So let's import the client. So import the likes client, right? We're going to fetch. So this user, right? So this is the user that has the ID, right? So that's the user ID. So I should be able to fetch, right? Fetch likes. And then so find albums that user likes. Yeah, perfect. Actually, I guess I'm using, oops. I guess I have to go up one, maybe. There we go. Yeah, and I need to pass in the user ID. Perfect, right? And then once I have the likes, I'm going to set the likes and I'm going to iterate over them. I'm going to fetch them here. I'm going to say fetch the likes, and I'm going to display down here the likes. Maybe H3, the likes here, and then I'm iterating the likes. Now here, I only really have the album ID. I don't have anything else, right? I don't have the title of the album. So I only really have like, and then the album ID. That's all I have, right? I don't need H3. And we need to implement this. I don't believe we've implemented. Yeah, we haven't implemented it, right? So this is users, right? User. So this is /API/users, user ID /likes. So it looks right, right? And did we implement that on the server? Did we implement that on the server in the routes? Find albums that user likes. Yeah, so it's this one. Yeah, we never implemented this. So let's implement it. So we'll fetch the user ID. We'll use the DAO, right? With pattern matches the user ID and retrieves the likes. So here we don't have the title of the album, unfortunately, right? So we could have solved that by providing in the like schema, we could have stored also the title. You know, we could have stored that too, album title, right? And we could have provided that when we do the create, not only provide the user ID, the album ID, but also the title. At least we could have displayed it, right? Or even better, right? There would be an entire collection called album where this is stored, right? But if you only need to store just a few things like the ID and the title, then maybe it's just this is just enough. You don't have to create an entire schema, an entire model, right, for a separate album to store all these fields, right? So maybe just the ID and the title, we can just store it here. The problem with this approach is that this is going to be replicated a lot, right? This title. And so if you have, 10 people liking the same album, the title is going to be replicated over and over and over, right? So that's a problem that we need to avoid. It's a small problem since we're only just storing that one string. If we were storing quite a bit more stuff about the album, then I would absolutely not use that, right? Instead, there would be a separate collection where we're storing, all the fields about an album that we care about, right? It would have its own primary key, and this would be just like this. It would be a primary key that points to where that album lives, and we store it there, right? So it's stored only once, and we just reference it from here, right? But this is small enough that it's okay. So yeah, here we're going to return the likes. We can't do the populate trick here, right? Because there is no collection where we're storing any data. So this is just going to have the album ID. That's it, right? So then on the client, we can go fetch it. Yep. And so in the details, we're going to fetch the likes, blah, blah, blah. We're going to store it and we're going to render it. Okay, let's see. Let's see if this works. So let's refresh. We'll go to Galadriel. There it is. See that? So that is the album. So this should be that album right there, right? 29 something something, right? So if we go to Galadriel, there's 29. Yep. The same thing. If I go to Tony, he likes the same album, right? Now, obviously, how am I logged in? Okay, I need to log in. Let's log in as Tony, right? And so, so if I search Beatles and I like some other album, so that one, and I like it, right? And I go to Tony. Oops, sorry. Crap. Wait a minute. Beatles. Okay. If I go here, oh it crashed probably. My server crashed. Yeah, sorry. Refresh the album. So yeah, so notice that Iron Man likes this. If I go here, notice that he likes these two albums, right? He likes these two albums, whereas Galadriel, just likes that one album. And I should be able to navigate to those albums, right? So for instance, in the likes, right, in the likes that we're rendering in the user details right here, these should be hyperlinks that allow me to go to those albums, right? I should be able to have this link that goes to the details of the album, right? Like that, so that I need to bring in a link here. Right, there's the link. And so now I can navigate to the album. There it is, right? I can go to Tony, right? Tony likes that one, but he also likes that the other one, right? I can navigate to the other one. I can navigate to all the albums that Tony likes, right? So that'd be a nice way that we can establish rapport. Says, oh, I like these albums and you like these other albums. I can navigate to details of those albums, listen to some of the songs about the albums that you like. You can come and visit some of the albums that I like, right? And we can establish a conversation and whatnot, right? But again, around some shared interest, right? This is not, well, I'm just going to display all the users, right? And just allow you to navigate to any user whatsoever. But it's more, I found you because we have a shared interest somehow, right? And so now I would perhaps follow you, and so I would display here in the profile screen. I would display not only the things that I am related to non-human things, I would also display here the things that I am related to other humans, right? And so that's what I mean in the requirement in the project that says that there should be in your profile screen or your account screen, there should be a list, right, of all the things that this person is related to. This person is related to these albums, so I should have a list of all the albums that he's related to, and I should be able to navigate to them, right? Also all the people that he's associated with, right? So all the people that follow him, or the people that left a message to him, or whatever. In any way, if Iron Man is related to some other person in any particular way, it should be visible here in the profile. So I can click it, right? And then go see that person. I can see the albums, I can see the songs, I can see whatever. Okay. All right. Yeah. So I'm going to make this available. I'm going to push it to this repository. And again, feel free to use it as your own and for your own project. Oh, one thing that we didn't do is sign up, right? Creating an account, which is almost identical to sign in, right? But instead of calling sign in, it's sign up, right? Yeah, you can do that one. So yeah, so next week, right? We'll talk about creating relationships between human users, right? We'll add a likes button here. We'll talk about Summon 5, the exercises, right? And it goes through doing some of these operations. Okay. All right, that's all I have for you. You have any questions? How was it? I have a question about session. Right, that's what we're going to do next week too. We're going to do a question about session. When we use the session correctly, even if development environment, when we refresh the page, it should not lose the current user data. Correct. Yes. The session is saved successful, but not working. How can I debug? Yeah, that we're going to work all that next week. We're going to talk about that next week. Um, what happens is that we're going to go out and fetch the current user from the session in the server. I'm going to cache it on the client. And then we're going to use the reducer, right, to share that data across the entire application. But then the problem is when you refresh. When you refresh, we have to go fetch that information back to the server, right, and then repopulate the current user in the reducer, right? So it can be shared across the application. So we're going to be talking all that next week. Also, we'll talk about protecting routes the proper way. Right now, we're protecting it by every time going to fetch the user, right? If you're not the role correct, then we kick you out. There's better ways of doing that. We'll talk about that as well. I'm a bit confused. DAO with reducer, is DAO pretty much same? No, it's not, right? We said that already, right? Yeah. Got it. Thanks. Okay. Is there something like a reducer for Node.js? Actually, reducer, you can use it in Node.js. You can use it anywhere. It doesn't care. It's not only for front end. You can absolutely use it for the back end as well. Yep. Yeah. The thing is that we want to minimize state management on the server as much as possible. State management on the client is fine, but on the server, we want to make the server as stateless as possible. And because it is a shared resource, right? It's going to have hundreds, thousands, millions of people hitting the same server simultaneously. And we don't want it to have to remember things about any one particular person, right? So ideally, it would be stateless because if you can imagine that if it needs to remember, a kilobyte or a megabyte about each person, and you have a million people, then you're talking about gigabytes, right? Or terabytes of data that I need to remember about all the people that are hitting me, right? So ideally, I don't have to remember anything about anybody. So all the state is encoded in the URL. So the URL is passing me all the information I need to know to fetch the correct person, fetch the correct album, do the operations, and then throw away everything away. I don't have to remember anything. With sessions, you do need to remember something, but it's something tiny, just a little tiny cookie, and they time out and go away. But anything more than that, we try to avoid. right? To having big objects stored per person, right? It'd be very, very expensive. Yeah, the video will be available soon, and I'll post it. All right, thank you, everyone. Good night.